You're listening to the Effective Statistician Podcast, the weekly podcast with Alexander Schacht and Benjamin Pieske, designed to help you reach your potential, lead great science, and serve patients without becoming overwhelmed by work. Today we are talking about something that is called the first mover advantage. And that is probably something you have heard somewhere else, but we talk about it, how it applies to you as a statistician. First mover advantage. You probably think about if I move first as being the first product on the landscape, and then all the others are me too, and what kind of advantage that brings. But here we talk really about statistics, because this is a podcast for statisticians, so stay tuned. Either way, I'm producing this podcast in association with PSI, also a community dedicated to statisticians, helping them to lead and promote the use of statistics within the healthcare industry for the benefit of patients. PSI has a lot of stuff going on, the video on demand content library, lots of webinars, and much more. Head over to psiweb.org to learn more about it and become a PSI member today. Welcome to another episode of The Effective Statistician. Today I'm again with Benjamin. Hi Benjamin, how are you doing?
Hi Alexander, very well. It's a gray winter day, so it's unfortunately we don't have these nice these nice winter days where you have snow and white outside, so everything's so more grayish and yeah. So how's it at your place?
Completely the same. I wish we had white snow, blue sky. That would be much better in terms of mood. I actually have some special light here in my office.
Oh, it's like
so
sunlight.
That it gets more kind of sunlight, and that helps overall with mood, and just helps to get more energy.
Does it also like warm up the room, so it's kind of a heater, like a real sun, or is it just about the light?
No, it's really just the light. Yeah, it's one of these lights that have really low warmth transmission. I also have two really big ones, which I use for video, and they actually heat up the room quite a lot.
So you have to be careful you don't start to sweat.
Yeah. So if I do video takes, then I really need to be careful there. I have a small room, which is really great from an audio perspective, and it's also really great from a kind of managing day-to-day tasks, because I can reach pretty much everything from my desk, which is great. But in terms of heating up with lights, they're kind of, these big studios would be much better. But, well, you can't have it all.
Yeah. So what's the topic today, Alexander?
First mover advantage. It's a really, really interesting concept. I first learned about it from Gary Sullivan when we were talking about communication aspects, negotiation, when we talked about conflict resolutions, these kind of things. And it's a really interesting concept. There is lots of written about it in game theory, in military, but also kind of in business, marketing, communication, politics. It's a concept that applies in lots of different areas. But today we don't want to talk about military or politics. We want to really talk about how it helps you as a statistician, in your day-to-day job. And of course, if you play chess
in your day-to-day job,
then obviously it's clear, white who moves first always has this little advantage in the game.
I think when I saw that we talk about this topic, I had two things in mind. So one is that we have this basically in stats, or like not in stats necessarily, but in general. So if you get a drug on the market, right? It's always the first one that is in the advantage of, they need to beat him, in proving better. Usually, I mean, to get an advantage on the competition side. So that is basically, if you're first drug, that's it. So that's why the speed is quite often very important to companies. So especially when we support them or working with them, and they have quite a high pressure on timelines, on submission dates, etc. So that is what my first thought was. The other one is
it sets a frame.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the same in communication as well. Yes, the first drug sets a frame in terms of what is important to look after. What are you don't have good side effects, but important side effects and not so important side effects. What are important features of the efficacy? There's a lot of communications and around in marketing to make the drug look really good. And that's a lot done by setting a frame. Which aspects do you really take care of?
No, absolutely. And it's not about, it's not necessarily about being quick in a way like a sudden move, like military. You would probably do the, advantage about sudden move. But for this one, it's more just, being first. And it's not necessarily related to a quick move, but it needs to be thoughtful as well. But
it's not about a first move that is done not on purpose and not in a thoughtful way, but it's making the first move in a thoughtful, knowledgeable way. Because the first move should also be a good one, not a bad one.
Yeah, and the second example where I was thinking of is more like in the practical ways. When you realize there's something not going as you would like to go, and you need to communicate it to your supervisor, to clients, or whatsoever. There's one way is to say, well, actually there's a mistake, full stop. But the second one would be, then you are waiting for something to happen, which is not like a good position, because the counterpart is the one that then makes the move. While when you, for example, provide and say, well, there's a mistake or there's something I need to tell you, and you bring the solution as well, right? So you basically put yourself in the position of being the first one moving, because you can guide your counterpart into a direction. That's the second one that I thought of. Is basically, don't bring the problem, bring the problem and the solution, because this is bringing you in the advantage of the first mover.
Yeah, completely agree. If there's a problem, it's really good. Also, if you messed up some things, that's one thing. The other thing is also if something happens, there's a side effect emerging for your new compound. Communicate about it proactively will help you to set the expectations, to set the frame. Let's say there's a side effect with your injectable, and there's some pain when you inject it. Then you can directly communicate together with be aware of setting the expectation with your patients that it might hurt. And here's a couple of things that you can do about it. Let's say, the temperature of the injectable, or the location where it's injected, or whether there's, you can potentially give some additional medication, therapy, whatsoever. I learned about it when I got vaccinated. This is the third time. I learned, that usually there's some, your shoulder aches, but if you move your shoulder directly afterwards and keep your arm up, then that has a good effect on reducing the pain. It's exactly that. Setting expectations, giving resolutions, things like that. It's much better than, if the other person hears about it, only experiences afterwards, is taken by surprise. These are all things that make things worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think we can put this into more or less every piece of our, I wouldn't even say work life, but real life. But let's focus on work life. It's there's so much. We discussed this many times that as a statistician or programmer, so you're not alone, right? So it's not a silo where you work, but you have interactions. So anything that you actually do has an effect, and anything that you don't do does not have an immediate effect, but might come back to you at some point. But then not because you action, but because you waited until something happened or somebody else. So that is something what I would always recommend to say, if you see a problem, if you see, could be resourcing, could be, timing, timelines, could be anything actually. So if you see it, action on it, because that is the way how to deal with upcoming problem, because otherwise you might end up saying, oh, sorry, it's too late now. I can't do it anymore. Or I don't know what to do, and let's discuss. So, but if you start up early saying, well, I have a problem. I see that there's something coming. I see that we have a potential problem, or have a voice, make action, because otherwise it's gonna action on you.
Yeah. The other point is if there's an opportunity that you see, if you're the first one kind of talking about it, you can move it directly in the right direction. Whatever you first talk about it will determine mostly what the discussion is about. If you talk about this, here's an opportunity to improve the quality, it will be a quality thing. If you first talk about here's an opportunity to speed up things, it will be a timeline topic. So you set the frame. That is also what effective politicians do. So if they, for example, speak about finance of the government, they can talk about tax reduction. And then the kind of verbatim is, nobody really likes tax, so the reduction is really good. Or another politician might choose about increasing the support from the government through social things and taking care of people and whatsoever. Then, of course, tax reduction is a bad thing. You don't speak about taxes, you speak about, all the good things that the government can do with the money. And when kind of, whatever the other side talks then in your set frame will give him a disadvantage. Yeah. So you can't, if the other side then say, no, tax reduction is actually bad, he's really, fighting a already lost battle. He's fighting uphill. It's the same as, oh no, if the government helps people, this is really bad. That's also kind of a lost game. So those people who set the frame control the so-called narrative. And controlling the narrative gives you a huge opportunity for influencing the direction of the discussion.
Yeah, and this is also like a strategic move for yourself. Yeah. Going back to the example of either it's quality or timelines. So, what is the better way or the faster way of approaching or getting over a problem or like an upcoming issue? So, is it what you prefer to work with quality? To say set this as a quality part discussion, or is it your project manager because it's about timelines? It's kind of a fake example now, but it's just in you set the direction and you decide with the first move, you decide who to primarily work with to solve it. So, and whether or not you involve persons, people groups, or your manager, that is the first move. What makes the decision? So the first step.
Yep.
And that definitely is something that you should be aware about, because otherwise you might end up seeing a problem and don't get any help. It's not.
That's a good point. Yeah, you can leverage this first mover advantage, or maybe it's actually applied to you.
Exactly.
You're kind of, be aware when someone else kind of makes a point. Do you really want to be in this frame? This morning, I was picking up some bread here next door in the bakery, and there was a headline of a big yellow press magazine in Germany about the number of people that are reported to have died because of COVID, that actually, COVID wasn't their kind of primary reason for death. And I was thinking, that's an interesting way to set a frame, because you could also look at the other way around. How many patients die because of COVID-related consequences, like not being able to go to the hospital, have a delayed operation, don't have access to physicians because they are occupied with other things, because of crowded emergency rooms or intensive care units. It's completely different, frame, and drives the discussion in a completely different way. How do you start? The kind of, so to say, the false positives or the false negatives? It drives the discussion.
No, absolutely. Yeah, but I think they these papers usually choose the one that has more ground for discussions.
But you can do it in any way. You can tell the story. Actually, COVID is not that bad because, in effect, kind of the number of deaths is overestimated. But you could also put it around. Actually, COVID is much more worse than we think, because there's much more people dying from COVID that don't end up in the statistics. And isn't it?
For both, you don't have the numbers, so that's why you can choose whatever you
numbers. You can make lots of arguments about kind of whether it's more over or underestimated. So that kind of helps you to understand how this first mover advantage works. I think there is a couple of additional thoughts to have, from think ahead, plan for the responses. This is what you as a first mover has really an advantage. You can much more kind of think through the process and therefore control the strategy. Like in chess, with your first move, you can already think about the next moves. Whereas the other person first needs to see the move and then can only react. And it also kind of gives you, the opportunity to be transparent in kind of disclosing all the information. And that builds trust because you provide something up front. Of course, it also, requires you to be vulnerable in a sense. Because as a first mover, you first kind of expose yourself. If you are the first one to ask a question, to point out a problem, to point out an opportunity, what kind of ever, you are kind of stepping up, and that means you're exposing. You might be rejected whatsoever. But I think this is what builds character, to do it anyway, and to, make sure that you have covered everything as good as you can do, but move.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's to own your decisions, to own your, in case it's failure, to own your failure, to take on the, responsibility for it, but not just saying, well, oh, sorry, I did the mistake, but really come with a solution. Think ahead. Think about who you're talking to, who you present this to. I think we cover this topic as well. So it's kind of there's a lot of things, who are you talking to? So what is their goal? Kind of going back this way. So how can we now work towards the resolution of, for example, an issue like a problem, a delivery, timeline, whatever. So it's kind of think before you act, but act.
Yeah. That's exactly the thing. You can prepare and ask all the different important questions to yourself. What are the pros here? What are the cons? When I want to convince somebody, where is that person probably coming from? Is that a person that is mostly concerned about quality, about timelines, about budget, about whatsoever? How can I best move him? Is it easiest to just tell the person what to do? Or is it better to kind of ask a question and invite him to kind of think in a certain direction to move him? Do you have some kind of examples that relate to that person's world that you can use? Do you have some maybe allies that you can pull in to convince the decision maker? Are there any rules that you need to follow, any processes you need to kind of speak about? This is really important. you can, if you see an opportunity, yeah, what does that require? You can do some research beforehand and have the numbers up there. Well, that requires for us to do a study that probably would cost X, Y, and Z and has this timeline and whatsoever. You can already kind of prepare for your questions. Or you can say, no, if we want to do this, we need to go follow this process, go to this person, have these kind of people buy in, and these are the next steps. You can have that all figured out before you move forward and ask a question, propose something. And that will make you a much, much stronger person. People will see you as someone that leads, someone that influences, someone that is helping the team move forward, someone that helps the company move forward. And these people are always in demand.
No, absolutely. And it's kind of, it's one big piece of a jigsaw in terms of, planning a career and your goals overall. And that's just one technique.
Okay, very good. We talked now quite a time about the first mover advantage, coming with examples from game, finance. We talked about kind of how that applies to, the first mover advantage in launching a new product. We talked about how you can, by moving first, set the frame of the discussion. How you can plan through all the different next steps in the best way so that you are driving the discussions, that you are leading things. Any kind of final points, Benjamin, on this topic?
Well, I think I gave quite a bit of examples. I think it's really something to encourage you, because it's not an easy one, right? It's not like kind of a natural one where you think, sure, I'm doing this. No, it's think about it and really take the step as a thoughtful and planned step, rather than just sliding into some kind of, decision that somebody else make for you. Yeah. That's really harming you at the end. You're harming yourself and the business, company, study, whatsoever, if you don't actively drive this. So, but learn it. It's not straightforward. It's something to think about.
Yeah, very good. Awesome. Thanks a lot, and talk to you next time.
Bye-bye.
This show was created in association with PSI. Thanks to Rain and Casey, who helped with the show in the background, and thank you for listening. Reach your potential, lead great science, and serve patients. Just be an effective statistician.